Welcome to Son Coaches Podcast, Season 9, and today I'm excited to be joined by the head football coach and athletic director at Edmund Burke Academy, Coach Andy Woodard. Thanks for being on with us.
Appreciate you having me on, Coach Lamb.
Well, I know you're a coach's kid, so you might have grown up all over the place, but where did you actually go to high school?
Yeah, I grew up coach's kid. Like my dad was a coach, both my uncles were coaches. It was the thing that we did in our family, and so he actually moved to Dublin, Georgia in 1994, and then we never left. And so I went to West Lawrence High School, and I got to play for the legendary. He was the sheriff for 1 year that I was there, Sammy Williams, and then John Kinney came in, and he was my head coach my sophomore through my senior year, and so that was an unbelievable experience just to play high school football. My dad was the defense coordinator. I played defense for him. I played safety, and so just to hang out with him, he had one rule. He taught about football on the ride home, on the car, in the truck on the ride home, and then unless you ask about it, he wasn't going to hound you about it. So he wasn't one of those like overbearing people anything like that. He's been doing it forever, and so that made it a lot easier, you know. But I want to step back and tell you that like the growing up on the sideline as a ball boy and going to football camp, that was my favorite week, and it still is my favorite week of the year. We go off to football camp because I enjoyed it so much at 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Every year I got to go to football camp. It was the greatest week of the year because it was football. It was going to sleeping in a dorm, which I thought was cool on a double, one of those little full beds. And, my very first memory of that is my dad's working at Dublin High School, and Sam Barr's the head coach, stayed at Middle Georgia College in Cochran, and we'd walk I'd walk with the players to go eat lunch. I'd go back to my dorm. I'd hang out in their dorms. It was just the most hung out in the rec room. That's how I learned how to play pool and ping pong, was from those guys. And then they would practice 4 times a day. I'd get up before the sun went up. We would do it all day long, and it was like the greatest 4 days of my life. And for them, it was probably the most miserable 4 days of their life. And it was just so much fun. I mean, and then I was a ball boy on the sideline all the time. I mean, my favorite story, I was a ball boy forever. I felt like from about 7 to whenever I started playing in high school. And so we're in the legendary Shamrock Bowl one night against Laney High School. And so I'm backing up, and if you know the bowl, it's got the concrete walls on the side, and I'm running out of room. This guy's barreling on me. He gets hit late out of bounds, and this guy crushes me. And I get up. I don't know what to do, and I've got this huge gash running down my head, and I'm going to need stitches. And so the legendary physical therapist there, Chuck Bass, looks at me and goes, "You got to go to the emergency room." And I was pissed because I was going to miss the rest of the game. And I couldn't. I mean, I was just so mad. And my mom took me to the emergency room, and so we went and did that. And then I got to miss the game, and it was. I mean, but I got the coolest scar ever, and I've told everybody every time in my life that I bled on that sideline over there as a ball boy, and then you know it was really really cool growing up in that household and being around sports, being around the game, and then it made probably high school football at West Lawrence much more enjoyable because I got to do it with him. My brother was on the team. It was just an awesome experience.
Well, did you play anything else, or were you just a football guy?
I played football and I played baseball, and so those were the 2 sports. My dad made us wrestle when we were in middle school. He said we needed something to do, and so we did that. But just really football and baseball was what we kind of played in high school.
So I always ask people that, did you go off to play ball, or did you just go to school? You knew you were going to be a coach because it's in the family, or did your parents ever say, "Please, son, don't do that. Do anything but coach," or did they kind of encourage you, "Hey, do what you want to do"?
Well, he wanted me like I always wanted to be a coach. Like I learned the hand signals of the defense like as a little kid. Like I wanted to mimic all that stuff. I wanted to know everything up. I would draw like as he drew something on the board, I would draw it over to the side the exact same way. And so I always wanted to be a coach. Well, so my senior year, we have a really good season with Coach John King. We make the playoffs for the first time in probably 8 or 9 years at West Lawrence. And so, it was, everybody's jacked up, everybody's excited. Well, at the end of the year, they get a principal change at the school, and so he gets relieved of his duties. New principal comes in and says, "You're out of here, dude. You're not my guy. You're gone." And so I remember, like at the dinner table, I'm asking Dad, like, why does it, like, he's got to make the playoffs, right? I mean, like, hasn't been done in a while, like increase the win total every year. Like, is this what this is really about? Because, I mean, as a kid and as a youth, like, man, you think about Friday night, you think about practice, you think about coaches' meetings that they had to go to, you think about those things. You don't think about the business side of it. He's like, "Listen, man, it's a business, right? The principal's going to hire the guy he wants. He want his guy, his pick in there." And so he's like, "Seriously, if you want to do this, this is a part of it." And so there was about a 1 week period that like I started filling out some college scholarships to go to Georgia Southern, and I was like, I'm gonna get in finance. Those guys look like they go to the country club, they play golf, they drive nice cars. Like that's got to be a better gig than this, right? So anyway, that lasted 1 week, and so anyway, I went to Georgia Southern, and then I knew I wanted to coach, so I started coaching as soon as I got to college. I was fortunate enough that Steve Price was the head coach at Trinity Christian School of Dublin, and so he reached out, and so my dad got on the staff. He retired, so he got on the staff, and so they asked me, "Would you help?" And I said, "Absolutely." So I started coaching football when I was 18 years old, and so that very first season there, I was in the box with a headset on, and I'm relaying information. I'm relaying fronts. I'm relaying like how they line up. First and 10, right hash. They come out in this formation, and that was a great staff. I couldn't have asked for a better group of people to have been around Steve Price. He's been on the podcast. He's won a ton of football games in Georgia. He's won a ton of football games in Florida. He was a phenomenal head coach. He's a great leader of men. And then Ben Snipes was our defensive coordinator. He did it forever. And so they would leave me in the room with Ben Snipes with the cowboy remote, and Ben Snipes would list with a legal pad. He would write his own first and tens, second downs, formation, play, and then he would ask me to do that in the box. And so that was an unbelievable experience to get to do that. And like I just learned so much football because he would make you rewind one play back 10 times. I mean, you could say, "Hey, pro twins tied into the right." He would say, "Rewind it back." Well, you rewind it back, you would do it again, again, and again. And then you would say, "It's this fullback dive to the right." He would just keep rewinding it back because he wanted to make sure that every one of those linemen base blocked it, or if there was any type of scheme change, and you had to. So I learned the importance of paying attention to detail, coding stuff. If he picked up on the tip, them offensive coaches, Steve Price and my dad was on the staff at that time. They would be in another room working, and he would make us start again. Like he'd say, "Oh, if the guy's going to pull and his left hand's down instead of his right hand down, we're going to go back and check down all the films." And so just you're getting to learn so much football, and then you're charting on so the importance, I guess I learned from an early age there was just like, man, you've got to have a good guy, eye in the sky. You got to be attention to detail. And so I worked with them for 2 years. So the first 2 years of college. And then, I needed to spend some more time at Georgia Southern. I was driving a heck of a lot from Dublin to Statesboro to coach football. And so John Kinney got the head coaching job. He was my high school coach at Southeast Bullock High School. And he said, "Listen, come on in, learn, like, hey, come in. It's the same offense. It's the exact same defenses as you ran in high school. Like, let's come in here. Come help me. Come do it." And so I did that for a couple of years with him. And so I had a lot of fun. We were historically not very good at that time. We played in a 10-game region schedule. We went 1-19 in my 2 years there. And so about the midway point of that second season I was there, my senior year of college, I'm like 21 years old. And he looks at me and goes, "Man, you got a great grasp for this. You got a great feel." He let me call plays in the JV. He let me, just coach my own position group. He never questioned. I mean, he knew I was going to do it exactly the way he wanted it done. And like he treated me like his own. And I was just one of the members of the staff. He looks at me and goes, "You're calling plays tonight." This is like on a Thursday. And I'm like, all right. So, I've kind of been a part of seeing play sheets being made. So like I sit down, I get on my computer at home, my little college apartment, and I'm typing up my play sheet because the guys on TV have play sheets. I need a play sheet. So, and we're going to play Blakely County. We're going to play Sandbars. The guy I grew up like idolizing. Like I chewed double bubble because he chewed double bubble on the sideline. I wanted to be everything like Sam, and so I got to call plays against him, and so I called plays a few games that year, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, we weren't very good, and it was a great learning experience for me, and I'm very appreciative. John Keenan will never know how much he did for me in this game as a player and then as a coach, and so that kind of gets me my 4 years of college in, and then my dad gets a head coaching job at Trinity Christian of Dublin. And so he gets the job. He calls me and goes, "I got a spot for you." So he hired me on to be his offensive coordinator, and I was 22 years old. And I thought that was the greatest world. We're going to get to coach together again, and we're going to get to be together, and we're going to get to see each other at school. And I was like, this is going to be the greatest. And so we did that together for a couple of years, and we had a lot of fun. We probably didn't win as many games as we wish we would have, but man, we just had a really great time together. My grandparents would come and watch practice. We had tons of family in the area. And so it was just a great experience. And so at the end of that second season, I got called to ask to interview for a head coaching job. And I was 24 and I was going to get married. So my dad was adding Sam Bars to the staff. He's like, "Man, it would really be great if you could just learn from Sam. I mean, he's one of the greatest ever to do it. It may not be a huge thing. I know you kind of got this head coaching thing out there, but I mean, we've got this good staff here. You're going to continue to grow if you stay here." But I was 24 and I thought that I had coached for at that point 6 years and that I knew everything and I was the smartest guy in the room and I just knew more football than anybody else and I knew how to run a program because I watched people do it my whole lives from, you know, my dad worked for Bob Herndon when I was little. And so, I mean, from Bob Herndon to Ross New to Sam Bars to all these great Jim Walsh Jr., all these great guys he worked for, I was like, through osmosis, I picked all this up. I mean, I can do this. And so the reason I take the head coaching job is my brother's a graduate assistant teaching PE at Georgia Southern. He said, listen, dude, this job is really close to Statesboro at David Emanuel Academy. And he's like, I'll come be your DC. Like, we can do this. Like, we've been around the game our whole lives. This will be easy. We had 17 players. It was the longest season of we went to the quarterfinals. We started 0-3. I wanted to I didn't know how to take failure, I felt like at that point, but we grinded those 17 players and got better and somehow won some games late in the year and got to the playoffs and got to the quarterfinals. And so that was a very much of a learning experience. We made 1,001 mistakes. We played a game with 13 because we got a bunch of guys beat up in practice because we thought we had to be more physical at practice. It just from the way the whole program operated, I learned every single thing, and I learned right then at that moment when that season ended in late November. I was like, I need to go and learn. Like I don't have all the answers. I'll never have all the answers. And so at that point, I said I need to go be an assistant coach. A guy named Clint Morgan, who's the director of our GIAA right now, was the head coach at got the head coaching job at Tatnall Square Academy in Macon. And so I went and got on his staff. I coached the special teams and I wanted to shut up, sit in the back of the room and just absorb as much football and program running and how everything worked. And so I went there the first year and was the special teams coach. And I coached the offensive tackles. We ran the flex bone. So the tackles had a little bit of a different job than the other guy. We had two line coaches and that was great. I was the only guy in the history of the world that coached offensive tackles and defensive backs. You don't see that combination a ton. I did that for the first year. And then the second year, I was still the special teams coordinator. We went from GISA then to Georgia High School. And, man, we just got on a great run that year. We went to the playoffs and lost the region championship game to Aquinas and then went back there in the quarterfinals and lost. And so just like I guess being from private school football and a little bit of doing both is just to go to some great places there. I mean, our very first road football game at Tatnall was at Hancock Central in Sparta.
Wait.
Yeah, so the first time we took these cats had been playing, GISA football forever on the road was in Sparta, Georgia, and we get off that charter bus and them guys from Hancock look at us like, "What is this?" And our guys got off the bus, go, "What is this?" So they look at us and they go, "Hey, we got an infant tiger outbreak in the locker room, so you guys are not going to be able to dress in there tonight. Y'all can dress in this tent over here, it's kind of loosely chained up, or you can go and just dress in your bus." And I mean, I'm happy that we all stayed and played the game because we won, but that was a culture shock right there. Because our next week we go down to Warren County, and that region was unbelievable. Our guys got a lot from going to Warren and Hancock. I mean, Hancock, Warren. We went to Twiggs, we went to Wilkinson, we went to a lot of places in those 2 years, and so it was I guess it's really entertaining to be a part of some of these historic stadiums. I eventually got to go to Buddy Buford Field at Lincolnton, and you just see Washington Wilkes' place and the history at some of these joints, and just to know all the great teams these guys had, and to get to coach against them and get to coach in these stadiums was pretty cool. Clint Morgan let me tag on to the first like head coaches meeting of the GHSA, the new Region 7 Single A. And I remember we get there and we're waiting around and no one says a word. We're in the library at Hancock Central, and he goes, and so we look at a guy and go, "Man, what are we waiting on? Like it says it's supposed to start at 6 and it's like 6:05." They're like, "Larry, because Larry Campbell's not here, we can't start." Larry walks in and that was my first real experience. Like Georgia high school football is a little different. When Larry Campbell, the legend, walks into the room, when he says it's time to start, it's time to start and it's time to do stuff.
Yeah, that checks out. That sounds about right. So where'd you go after Tatnall?
So Clint Morgan he decides he's going to leave coaching after 3 seasons there, and so kind of was a free agent. So I didn't know what to do. My wife was in nursing school at the time, and so Keith Hatcher had just gotten the Melton Sales job the year before. So Keith calls me up, and when you're in Macon and there's 4 private schools within about 4 miles of each other, you're all friends and you're all pretty tight, except when you play each other. And so Keith calls me up and says, "Hey man, I got a spot. Would you be interested?" And I said, "Absolutely." So, Keith, all those, I mean, coached at Valdosta State, Georgia Southern, Murray State, his brother Chris was at Sanford cousin Chris was at Sanford forever. So, man, I worked with him for a year, and so I was his defensive coordinator. I told him when I took the job, I said, "Listen, I've been around offense a lot and some special teams. I want to do something different." And so he said, "Yeah, man, come on." So he taught me his defense, and so like the coverage we play today is the same coverage I learned from him. I learned so much football from him, and he said it best. He goes, "I did this every day for 12 years. Like I know a lot of football, I've seen a lot of football, and I'll be glad to teach you a lot of football. But when you do it every day, you're gonna have to get something out because that's your job." And so I just had a we had a good year with him. And so my wife was a nurse. She was in nurse practitioner school. And so she is from Waynesboro. And so she says, "Listen, I need to go to Augusta. That's where the hub of medicine is. This is going to be the best place for my career." So listen, I'm a young guy. At this point, we've been married just for a few years. Listen, I drug her from to Stillmore, Georgia, where David Emanuel is. When we were engaged to, I drove her to, I took her to Macon. We had no family nearby. And when I went there, like she still had to finish work and down in that area. So like we lived separated for like almost the whole summer. And so we had just got married, and then I went off the basketball camp because I helped coach basketball. And so I needed to do what was best for her. And so we moved. And so I was kind of looking for a job, and I had a friend reach out and say, "Hey, listen, James Leonard just lost his defensive coordinator, and he's like looking for a guy that he can trust that, has some." And so I knew a couple of guys on the staff. They reached out for him. I met with him on like Black Friday in his office. And then next thing you know, a few days later, they're like, "Yeah, come on over. We got a spot for you." And so I was at Aquinas High School as the head baseball coach and the defense coordinator for 3 seasons with him. And so, man, it was cool to be back in the same region. I was just on the other side of it. And so, Leonard, that dude can coach ball, man. He's won a ton of games. He's got a unique way of doing it. He's one of the greatest players coach ever. He can relate to players unbelievably well. And so we won a bunch of games there, won a region championship, and went to the quarterfinals a bunch of times. Our problem in the quarterfinals is we kept playing this guy called Tate Ratledge at the Darlington school, and that big old joker. Yeah, I remember one night we're in Rome, and he walks across the field, and one of our assistant coaches looked and said the earth just tilted. That's how big he was. And anyway, they knocked us out a few times, and so that happens, and then I get a call to from a man that I have a ton of respect for because my uncle worked for several years. That was Steve Pennington. He had just gotten the job at Bullock Academy in Statesboro, and so it was COVID, and so you're working in like independent schools, and so you're kind of uncertain about what COVID means because you don't know what the finances are. And Aquinas was run by the Diocese of Savannah, and so they're freezing our retirements here, and they're doing this. They can't promise me a contract. It was just kind of a nervous time, and so Coach Pennington calls me and says, "Hey, I got a spot. Everybody speaks really highly of you. I know your family, so." You go from working from James Leonard, who's won 100 plus games in a state championship, been to another one, and then you can go work for a great guy like Steve Pennington, who's won 200 plus games and multiple state championships. And so I jumped at the opportunity. At that time, we lived in Augusta. We moved to Waynesboro. And so I just drove from Waynesboro every day to Bullock Academy. And he and I worked together for 2 years. I was his offensive coordinator and assistant head football coach for the first year. And then the next year, I became the AD, and I was the assistant head coach for him and the offensive coordinator. And so, man, I just think the world of Steve. He's the best human being in the world. Just a great football coach too. There's not a guy out there that loves what he does and loves kids and loves and sees it as a true mission. It was really, really cool to be a part of him. He won his 215th game when we were together. And so just to celebrate that, because I got him into another plateau of the win category. I think I put him in the top 30 people of all time at the time or something like that. And so we had some great years there. We went to the quarterfinals twice. And so I was his AD, and they bring me into the office and they go, we want to go in a different direction. You need to, uh, you know, we're thinking about going a different direction with Steve. And I was like, "Listen, y'all know what you're talking about. This guy's forgot more football than anyone on this campus will ever know. He knows he's won more with less. He's won more with more. He can do anything." They're like, "Well, we're just thinking about it." So he and I always had an agreement that if he ever thought the heat was on him, that he was going to ride off into the sunset on his own time. So we had a couple of talks. He decided he needed to do something. He was going to hang it up and be good. And so he did. And so long story short, I'm the AD, and so I've got to hire the football coach. So we go through there, we're collecting resumes. We've got our search committee because that's what I'm told to do. And we've got to do this and we've got to do that. And we're meeting with these groups of people. And so, anyway, we hire the coach from Edmund Burke Academy. He takes the job. And sure enough, he takes it and like, listen, we offer the job to him the next day. Edmund Burke calls me and they're like, "Hey, listen, we know you live here. We know you go to church with us all. Like, would you want this head football job?" And I was like, "Are you serious?" They're like, "Yeah, I mean, come on." They're like, "You want to drive 50 minutes to work every day or do you want to drive 7 minutes to work? Like, what do you want to do?" And I was like, I hadn't really thought about being a head coach that much. Never, I hadn't even interviewed for a job or anything like that. And they just, called me up, said, "Hey, you want it?" I said, "Absolutely." So I said, "Absolutely." Didn't know what the pay was. Didn't know if I could bring a staff. I just knew my commute was going to be much shorter than what it was. And so we hired Bull Academy hired their coach. They hired me within the span of about 3 days, which is the greatest coaching switch of all time. Both schools got really pissed off at the other one about it. They thought we were both tampering with each other. They thought like, oh, we pulled some schemes and like, I mean, I got my butt chewed really, really good. And so we worked out a way to just switch places for the rest of that school year. And so on about March of that school year, I was at Edmund Burke every day. I got to teach the weight classes. I got to be around the kids. I volunteered to help coach baseball just so I could like be around the guys and get to know them and like start building the relationships. And then I was like, well, this could give me a head start on everything from equipment inventorying to how you interact with everybody to how the school day operates to how the kids see everything. And then I was like, all right, now it'll help me. I'll be, I'm the AD there now. So like I can hire the staff. I can figure out how we're going to do that. And so my dad always told us that if you wanted to, if my brother or I ever became a head coach, that he would come and work for us. And so I called him up. He's retired. At the time, he was vacationing in Thailand. So he had been in Thailand for several months. And so we had to talk at like 5 a.m. or like 12 o'clock at night because it's on the other end of the world. And so I said, "Hey, I got this job. Do you want to come to Waynesboro, Georgia?" And he goes, "I mean, yeah, but I don't know what the logistics of me getting out of here are, like we're wrapping up the end of COVID. Like it's kind of weird. But look, I already talked to my mom and she was like, "Oh, we're going to come." Like, so my headmaster at the time interviewed both of them via Zoom 12 hours later on the other end of the world in the other hemisphere for two teaching jobs. They hired all three of us. And so, like, I mean, boom, you're the head coach and you got your staff. And so my dad literally, I picked him up from the airport on a June day for some, and then I said, he's like, "Man, I got jet lag really bad." I mean, I stopped in Qatar. I stopped in this place in Europe. He's like, "I finally got to Atlanta." He's like, "I'm exhausted." And I was like, "All right, well, go to bed." This is like 7:30. And I was like, "Go to bed." And he was sleeping in our guest room at the time. I was like, "Go to bed. And guess what? We'll go to summer workouts in the morning at 8 a.m. Like, it'll be fine." I was like, and then he stepped in and we've been doing it together here for 4 years now. And so, man, we've had a great run here. We've won about 34 games in 4 years and we've won two state championships and we played in another. And so, man, it's been an awesome experience to build a program, and it's been an even better experience to do it with your dad right there, to be the person you could vent to when you needed to vent, to be the person that could be a sounding board. And we've just been able to hire really great people here too. Like Philip Richards is one of my best buddies in the world. He's a head coach at Claxon High School right now. And so he came to work with us for a little bit. We've got John Willoughby on, who I knew when he worked with my dad in the 90s at Dublin High School. And so we just got these great connections of people that like want to be with us, want to coach at our school and hang out and be with us. And so it's just, we've had just a great run of stuff.
That's awesome. Before we get into all that, though, Coach, I got to pay some bills. Hey, coaches, if your team needs to raise money, check out Scoreboard Fundraising. In the past year, they've helped more than 1,000 teams across the Southeast run simple, effective fundraisers, from popcorn to online donations. Call Mike James at 770-680-3424 or visit scoreboardfundraising.com. A lot of teams I know are using these guys. Again, that's Mike James at 770-680 scoreboardfunding.com. The great people, most of them are old coaches. They get us, they know how we work. So make sure you give those guys a follow. Give them a call if you need to raise some money. They're our title sponsor for the next 100 episodes here on Sun Coaches Podcast, and we're so grateful to them for that. This is your second head coaching job. Your first one was at DEA. Now you're at EBA. How much different was it after, the first one, you were a little bit younger, you only had 17 players, to going to EBA where you may have had a few more players, but you're still in a little league. It's not like you're playing with 70, 80 people, like some of the bigger schools in the system do?
Well, first off, those 10 years between head coaching spots were like, is the greatest chance for me to learn how to be a real assistant. You don't have an appreciation of how to be a real assistant coach and how to be a guy that's going to take crap off the head coach's desk and to be the person the head coach can vent to be the person that's going to be the last one to leave and just make him feel like he's constantly supported until you sit in the big chair, right? When you sit in the big chair and you know it's all about you, and I'll say this, like, the very first time around, all I could think about was, "Well, this guy did it like this. Well, I'll copy this, and I'll steal this little piece, and I'll do it like people I always looked up to. Like, oh, my dad did this like this. I'll do this." You know, always looked up to Sam Bars and John Kenny. Well, they did it like this. Well, I'm gonna do this part like this. And, like, I felt like the first time around, it wasn't really anything that I believed in. It was just I was just stealing stuff from other people, hoping it would all mesh together. And this time around, I said, listen, I may not ever get to do this again in my life, but we're going to do it the way I want to do it. Every single part of it. I'll listen to other people's input. I'll listen to other people about if they have a better idea, but I'm going to make the final decision and I'm going to have the conviction of doing it. And so that was enjoyable because I told myself from the beginning, like, this is the way it's got to be. If I'm not going to do it like this, then just go back to being an assistant coach. You'll be easier, happier, and you won't lay in bed at night and worry about who the third team left guard is, or does he know how to block the play right that week? Or, my staff will tell you, like, I'm notorious in the season of like worrying about, is the third team center ready to go? Do we have the fourth long snapper? Is he adequate for the week if he had to go in and play? And so that was like the experience. Just the experience of it all made it a lot easier to make some decisions, like from every part of how to run the program on a day to day basis, and it made it a lot easier. And so you had these things that were non-negotiables that you thought about, and so that was the helpful.
So what was, it like the first state championship?
So it was really, really cool, man. It was a unbelievable run for our kids. So the school had never won a state championship. It had lost in 4 prior attempts at different times. Buddy Sarr was the head coach for 2 of those, and Terrence Hennessy, who's been on the podcast, was their offense coordinator. So it was just an unbelievable run. We had a great group of guys, and it was just the town was on fire, the kids were on fire, and so the best way I can say it was like the regular season's plodding along, and next thing I know, like I felt like I woke up and the season was over because every day it's like you're preparing for the next game, they're preparing for the next week, preparing for the next opponent. Like I've got these rituals during the week. I'm always gonna watch special teams cuts by myself on Wednesday, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do this, and watch this game plan here, or tweak this, and have this meet with this coordinator, or meet with this coordinator. And I literally blinked, and it was all over. I remember the legendary Alan Lowe once told a friend of mine in the state championship game, "Hey, look around before the kickoff because you'll never know if you'll get to do it again." And so I was like, "Okay, I'm gonna look around one time." So I looked around one time. I saw we had a lot of fans, and then the game got started, and I can only really probably pick out 3 plays like as they went on because that whole season was just a blur, and it was really, really great. I mean, the we made a bunch of plays in the game and all season long that was really, really cool. Like our defense scored in like 9 games that year. That was unbelievable. And we hosted the first time ever a state semifinal game at home. And so we closed the city of Waynesboro down on Black Friday. Then they all went up to Mercer. And so the first one was a really, really cool experience. And so um, we knew we had a pretty good team come back for the next year. And so we thought, oh man, we're gonna be pretty good again. We actually dropped down a classification. So we won the AA state championship in 2023. And then in 2024, I was like, I'm gonna enjoy every minute of this. Like the last time I blinked and it was over. And so, man, we had just a great group of players. And I told you off air that Chip Walker talked about the players. They're the ones that know how to handle it the second time. And our players the second year were like machines. They could go through a practice. Dad and I joked about it with them one time. We had like a bad practice one time, like the whole year that we were like, man, that practice stunk. The kids' effort was terrible. The execution was terrible. The assignments were terrible. But like every other day, like you walked off feeling like these guys are ready to go. We're still a big take you off the football camp team. And so we went off to camp, and like before that year, I looked down and I was like, these guys are pros. Like I don't feel like they don't need to hit that much in training camp. Like I'm gonna get them the reps they need and get them the rest, right? As long as we get them to Fridays, we're gonna win. And so, man, we were able to win that second one. We won that one at Georgia Southern, which was a cool experience going down there. Go to school there. We're going to games there as a kid. And so to win the second one was really, really neat. And it was you know, an unbelievable experience. We had a great individual effort from our stud player that night. He touched the ball every play of the second half except for the kneel down. We gave it to him in some form or fashion. And he just kept saying, like, I'm good. Like, just keep kind of giving it to me. And then, he tells one of our linemen, he says, well, I'm kind of cramping. He goes, shut up. I've towed the ball 7 consecutive offensive snaps. So, like, you're going to be fine. And so, you win 2 in a row, and then everyone's like, "Coach, you gonna win the third? Like, what's the deal around here?" And that third, so this past year was a chance to go for a three-peat. We lost so many players from the previous few years that have experience, had playing time, and so, man, it was just I thought might have been one of our better coaching jobs as far as like we lose both quarterbacks in the second game of the year, second and third games of the year, so we've got no quarterback. We're going into a bye week. And we had to come up with a way, and we didn't have very many players. Our numbers were just a little down in the high school. So we started the year at 21. We're dressing the game after the bye week with 16. And so I went to every skill guy and said, hey, if I created a wildcat for you, could you do it? And I told every kid on the team, like, hey, we're going to get you in. You're going to be in a personnel group and on offense. We're going to come up with a way to move the ball to win. And so we got to play. We were playing Glasscock County. We had 2 weeks to kind of put this in. The first day, it looked horrendous. The second day, it looked bad too. And I'm beginning to wonder, like, dude, did we make a mistake? Can we back up a punt? We're still on like Thursday of the bye week. I was like, I'll make these guys practice on Friday, like to get something right. And it started it wasn't beautiful to watch, but we said, hey, can we get the game to like 110 huddle clips? And that includes the one where he zooms in to test the camera, Like, can we get it to like, special teams included, can we play the game at a pace to get to 110 clips and like maximize our defense, who was really, really good. Our defense finished last year averaging 9 points a game for the whole season. And so we won some games. We got some players back. We got into the playoffs. We got healthy at the end of the year. And we get to the state title game and, just made a couple of like bonehead mistakes and young guy mistakes and turned it over a few times and missed a field goal here. And next thing you know, you lose one.
For a lot of the guys watching and listening, they may not understand what it's like to coach a team with 25 or less on your whole team. So kind of talk me through how you organize practice and to get your offense, defense, and special teams and to get a look and things like that with such small numbers.
Yeah, it's all right. You got to be you got to try to plan as smart as possible. Like we start every day with a team meeting. And in that team meeting, I tell myself we have 8 minutes to install the offensive things for the day, like 4 or 5 minutes, and then 3 or 4 minutes for maybe the defense. And we've got to like chunk this material in such a way that these guys and we make them all have a notebook. So they all get a spiral bound notebook. They take out their pens and the paper, they sit in their locker, and they take these notes on what we want to emphasize for that day. You can't do everything every day with this. Like with a roster of 25, like the most we've had here is we had 28 one time. And so we've been always hovering around the low 20s. And so you've got to be smart in the way you get them prepared to go to practice. So now you can maximize the reps because they only got so many legs and everyone wants to save everybody's legs for Friday. And that's the smart thing to do. So you got to taper off at some point, and they're all playing both ways. I mean, we had a couple of times this year where we only played like 14 people in the whole game. Offense, defense, special teams. That means that guy, so Monday might not be a big physical install. I mean, it had to be more of a mental install day, and we had to get out there in shells and go through a bunch of things. But you got to be smart about the way you get everyone to Friday, right? At some point, and get the game plan in and expect everyone to get it and to do it. So we always just kind of go in shells on Monday and say, hey, this is a big game plan day. We're going to literally jog through the opponent's best 10 plays a bunch of times, right? After you go to Indy. And you got to be smart about your Indy because, your corner could be your backup safety who also could play running back and wide receiver, right? And so schematically, you've got to have a scheme that is complex enough to mess with the defense week in and week out. But you also have to have offensive defensive players that can play multiple positions. Now, we don't always have the moment where our running back will be our backup right guard, but we're a couple springs away from the next week. That will be the case. But it ain't always that way. So you've got to kind of be smart. We're a big physical practice team on Tuesday though. So we'll tell them we got to get after it in these blocks of time, right? Team defense, inside run offense, and so everyone's got to go it. So people don't understand the way to get a look for us is I'm always the scout team quarterback. If I've got a couple of young coaches on staff, they're playing scout team receiver or they're playing scout team wingback. And listen, and we can run the wing T with 4 coaches playing different positions on offense, or we can try to mimic everything that we've got. Jonathan Broxton, who is a Burke County guy who played Major League Baseball, is on our staff. Listen, if we're down one scout team lineman because one of them went home sick, he's going to go play scout team guard or tackle or tight end, and that's a 290-pound dude. I mean,
Yeah,
he's like the 1% of the world athletically.
yeah, he's a full-grown man. He was
He's
when
a
he was
full
16.
Yeah. I mean, like, he's gonna go and do it, and so, like, we kinda got, like, mass units of coaches and players being the scout team and, like, giving people looks if we have to. It's just man, that's just kinda the way you gotta go about business in your, like, your special teams, and you've gotta be, like, super guys gotta have roles, and they gotta buy into roles in special teams. Like, we had a couple of guys this year, we had a 93-pound guy on the kickoff team. He had 4 tackles this season. 90 he runs down there, but he bought into a role, he's chopping people's legs down. Like, he ain't gonna play corner in the game, but he's gotta go spill blood for your number one running back, you know?
Well, it's gotta be challenging when you're dealing with different numbers and you're dealing with different sizes, and like you said, buying into their roles, like you said, dynamite comes in small packages. 93 pounds can still go down there and knock some legs out from under somebody.
Absolutely. And so it's just, I mean, it's a great team aspect of it all. And so that makes it pretty cool to operate it. And so listen, guys buy in because I believe morale is high when everyone's involved. We tell every kid if you work hard every single day of the off season in the weight room and on practice, we'll get you in on a special team. Like we'll get you in on there. You can play a role player. Man, we'll come up with personnel packages for like the weakest guy ever to get lined up somewhere to occupy space or block down or be on the backside of an unbalanced formation. Man, we make a living of hiding a 130-pound guy who thinks he's a tight end there.
Yeah, I've always believed in that too, that let that kid be able to go home and tell his mama, "Listen, mama, I'm on the kickoff team. So when we kick off, that's when don't go get to the concession stand. I'll be in on that play." That
That's
way
right.
those younger kids and those not as experienced kids, they get to be a part of it. And and when they're younger, it kind of eases them into being one of those, guys you count on to play both sides and all the special teams when you're playing with just 14 guys. And that's huge. So I don't how in the world do y'all even bother with do y'all have a spring? Or I imagine everybody's playing baseball or, everybody plays everything there. How do you do spring in your summers?
Yeah. So, all right. So, of course, everybody plays everything, right? Your football team, our football team right now, we just did a study. Every kid on it, we bring back 19 varsity players for this upcoming season. So, all 19 are playing at least one sport, and 12 of them are playing two sports. So that means they're playing baseball, they're playing golf, they're playing tennis, they're running track, and they're doing some combination of those two. And so, like even the weightlifting program that we do is geared on the fact that like these guys are going to miss school to go to a baseball game, go to a tennis match, to play golf, to like go run in a track meet. Like it's geared on the fact that it doesn't need 5 days a week. Like, all right, if we can get them 3 days or maybe 3 to 4 days, 4 days is golden, 3 days is good. Like without us having to get them up at 6 a.m. to come lift weights, like that's just the way we got to do it. So we even structure the off season that way. So we do no spring ball at all. And then like so that trickles into what we do in the summer. Like our summer, I believe, is really good. We go 3 days a week in the summer because our baseball playoffs typically don't end until around Memorial Day. And so, man, we could go from, and we've done it here several times, is we played baseball Memorial Day weekend, and the next thing we looked up, and we don't have that in our league as a dead week, and we started that Tuesday, and they had played baseball state championship on Saturday, and like we gave them no time at all off. Last year we took it off, and so I'll probably evaluate it again this year. How depending on how we do how the baseball is going throughout the year. So we go 3 days a week in the summer: Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I believe in getting back a day, so we come back and throw 7-on-7 in like the Augusta 7-on-7 league for FCA that they have, which is that they do a phenomenal job doing it. We had a kid get saved there a couple of years ago, and like he wanted to be baptized on the football field after a game. And so, man, we got the team chaplain there. He got baptized. And then, like, man, it created like a spiritual revival in our school. Like, we had like a chapel the next week, like we always do. There, 50 kids at school got saved because they watched this kid like profess Christ in front of others and tell them how awesome it's been since he's been a Christian. And then he gets baptized. And then, you know, the kid goes on, he's an all-state player that year. He'd been a really good player before. He even goes to another level. And so, like, man, our school was like, I mean, it was like we had like a spiritual revival for a whole year because of one action of one kid to stand up. And you've been a part of those. Like, you're at those FCA things, they're like, hey, if you believe in Christ, stand up. He's the first one to stand up, and he's walking to that guy about how to accept Christ. And so I'm like, this is why we do this. Like, winning's awesome and all this kind of stuff's pretty cool. But, like, man, watching kids do that, like, that's what it's really about. And so to watch him get baptized with his like family there, his brothers were on the team, so that was all a cool thing. And so, but to go back to like so we go 3 days a week, and we get them back for set on Tuesday night 7-on-7. So I look at that as the fourth day for the month of June. And then in July, I still stay with the 3 days a week only because we have such a limited amount of time before we can start practice. So like our practice date for acclimation is different than Georgia high schools. We can wear shells, we can wear helmets and shoulder pads, and we can start the third week of July, which is around the 20th or so. And so that gives you some extra practices. And then we can go in full pads the next week, the last week of the month, and then we're allowed 4 joint practices. So what we've done here for the last 2 seasons is with the way the school calendar worked out, we went off the camp. We'd always done camp in the gym, and we'd done it during the helmet and shoulder pad week, and it was pretty good. It allowed you to get all those great camp feelings in and all those great camp moments in. But we were able to then turn it around and go off somewhere. So we've gone to another school for several years, and what we did there was, man, we had our own practice in the morning, and then 3 nights of the week we would go get after it for a number of plays. And so we'd always done that. We'd always find a joint practice. For those of you that have an idea what this looks like, imagine the NFL joint practices that you see them have on TV. It looks just like that, right? You get 8 plays, you get 8 plays. It's governed by the coaches. It's got a time limit. After 2 hours, it's done. And like you just go at it with your ones, your twos. You can work whatever situations you want to work. You can do whatever. But like that's the best way that we're going to get 11-on-11 work to get the season started without us killing the number twos.
Well, Coach, I sure do appreciate you coming on and sharing your story from being a coach's kid and coaching for legends and working with legends to building your own story yourself, winning 2 state championships and well on your way to being a legend yourself. I sure do appreciate you coming on and sharing the story of Coach Andy Woodard and the Edmund Burke Academy. Y'all are the Eagles, right?
Spartans.
Throw the Spartans. Spartans. What the hell am I thinking? Spartans. But doing a great job, 2 state championships in just 4 years and played for another one. I'm sure there's more great things on the horizon for you.
Thank you so much.
All right.